7 years ago, I went for a routine mammogram, and it was one of those things that the letter came and it was on the desk, and I kept thinking, I must do that, I must do that. Got around to doing it, went in, normal day, and had the mammogram. And then they said, can you just come back in? Because we've just want to check something. Didn't think anything of it, went back in, they checked it again, and they said, could you come back? Because we just want to do a little bit more of an investigation. So suddenly you start to panic. You think, why do they want to investigate further? So I went back in, they took a biopsy, and then I got the call a couple of days later to say, I'm very sorry to say, but we found cancer. And then my world just changed that day. I sat in the car, fortunately I wasn't driving, and I just started to panic because nobody wants to get that word thrown at them. You've got cancer. And I just thought, how can I have cancer? I'm healthy, I'm fit, why me, why me? Which I think is everyone's first reaction. And then I had to go home and tell my partner that, I've been told I've got breast cancer, which was the hardest thing to do because very sadly, my partner's first wife died of cancer. Not breast cancer, it was colon cancer, but nevertheless, he lost his wife from cancer. So, that was a double sort of whammy to have cancer myself, be dealing with that, and then knowing that telling my partner would be absolutely devastating. So then I had to go and see a specialist, and we sat there, and that night, first of all, that night, you cannot get those thoughts out of your head as you think, what am I going to do? What am I going to survive? Is this going to be some awful diagnosis that I'm told I've got so many months to go? You can't get those thoughts out of your head, and you try so hard. And I'm a very positive person, so I try to be positive. So then when we get to see the specialist, he told me that I had stage 1 lobular breast cancer. So he said, we're going to have to operate. He said, so it means a mastectomy. And because of what you've got, it might go to the other breast. It's the one that's more likely to go to the other breast. So you have a choice. You can either have a single mastectomy or a double mastectomy. But what he did say was, considering you have breast cancer, this is the best news I can give you. So you ought to go home and have a glass of champagne, which was quite a bizarre thing to say. But basically what he was saying is, yes, you've got breast cancer, but we can deal with it. And my partner was with me in that meeting, and we came out and he just said, I can't tell you how different this is than when I went in with Nikki, his first wife. He said, we came out of that first meeting with a very, very different diagnosis. He said, so we have to be positive, which of course we were. We were really positive. So then it was like, okay, and now I've got to make a decision, single mastectomy or double mastectomy. I spoke to friends that have been through breast cancer, and that really helps. When you have breast cancer, it really helps to speak to other people that have been through the journey. It's all very well speaking to your best friend, and they can be empathetic, but they haven't been through the journey. So I spoke to a really good friend that had a double mastectomy, and she said, Michaela, take them both off. She said, because you'll always worry. If you've got the choice of having a double, get rid of them both. So, obviously I got other opinions and I thought about it a lot. So then we had an appointment with the plastic surgeon. And then Nick and I, my partner, get a bit hysterical about that because suddenly, on the Monday, I'm told I've got breast cancer. On the Wednesday, I'm told I have to have a mastectomy. By the Friday, I'm looking at fake boobs, and the plastic surgeon is sort of looking at my boobs. He tells me to take my top off. He's looking at them. He's going, okay, so let's see what we can do. It's a shame they've drooped a bit. I mean, hello, thank you very much. And then he's showing us the types of sort of fake boobs you can get. And I'm looking at these things and we're holding them up, and my partner and I just got hysterics. I mean, we just suddenly fell apart. I mean, laughing, but laughter is very close to tears a lot. And we came out, we just thought, oh my God, this journey, it's happening just so quickly. And I don't know, in a way it happened too quickly, because suddenly all these things are thrown at you and you're in fight or flight mode and you're panicking and you go with these decisions. Anyway, so I decided to have a double mastectomy, and then we booked it in, and then I, went in and had the operation and came out with 2 boobs less. For me, it was very difficult to explain it to Ollie, who was 8 at the time, because he's got 3 half brothers and sisters that lost their mum to cancer. So this is a conversation that we talk about a lot in our house. Tom, Sam and Jade lost their mum to cancer, and he's very aware of that. So I didn't want the word cancer to be associated with death with him. So we had to be extremely careful how we explained it. So I said, Ollie, I'm going in for an operation. I'm going to have my boobs taken off because I've got cancer, but mine is the good cancer. It can be taken away. But, we had to be incredibly positive around him. As I say, because we didn't want cancer to be associated with death, because it was a very normal thing for him that if you had cancer, you died because, the half brothers and sisters' mum did die. People say it's a life-changing diagnosis. For me, I guess my life changed a bit. I try not to sweat the small stuff anymore, and I tend to get a lot of pleasure from very small things now. However, I've always appreciated life. I've always been a positive person. I've tried to be healthy, and I try to be fit, and I try to get out into nature a lot. So those things were already there. So I don't think my life changed as dramatically as some people's lives do. And I think if you're someone that is not a healthy person, you live a very unhealthy life, then you need to really think about that once you get a diagnosis, because it won't help your recovery, and it won't help it not coming back if you don't readdress that. But as I say, for me, that was already there. So yes, of course, it does change you. And I think you start appreciating life a lot more. I carried on working throughout my cancer experience because that's just the way I am. I just wanted to keep my life going and forward and forward. And in fact, 6 weeks after my operation, I was doing Spring Watch. And I didn't want the public to know that I'd been through the journey, because I didn't want people to think about my tits when I'm talking about blue tits. So I just didn't want people looking at me and feeling sorry for me as they watched the show. So I kept it fairly private. Obviously, all my friends knew. As far as the team went, I told a few people. I told the people that really needed to know. Apparently everybody ended up knowing, because you tell one person, they're going to tell someone else, that person's going to tell someone else. So apparently the whole team knew, but they were very good. I'm not sure that was the best idea. Maybe for me it was good, because that's how I work. I can cope with things if I continue on. And it wasn't until after Spring Watch that I actually fell apart quite a bit. And during Spring Watch, there were a couple of times when I did fall apart. And, I remember one meeting and I'm sitting there and I'm crying. It all got too much and I'm crying. And then I have to go on, and do telly. So it was difficult. And I think it depends on your personality. And I think, I don't know, maybe it would have been better to take the time off and actually let your body recover. And in fact, it was Chris Packham that said to me, he said, the trouble is, you go for an operation like that and major things have happened inside your body. But because you wake up and it's all stitched up and you're given painkillers, you kind of feel okay. And yet your body has been traumatized by an operation. And so you need to give your body a bit of time and a bit of love and just be nice to yourself to let that recover. And the other thing I will say is, I had the operation, they put the implants in, and the way they did mine was they're temporary implants. And then the most bizarre thing happens is that they sort of blow them up to make them the size that you want to be. most people want the size that they originally were. So you lay down with these implants that have a sort of port that then they put this saline solution in and they pump it up. You literally lie down and you watch your boobs expanding. It's bizarre. And you know, I only had one because I'm not a big girl and I wanted to just be, that's enough, thank you. And anyway, then you have another operation, a reconstruction operation to make them more permanent. And actually the second operation was harder for me because I think I didn't have so much fight or flight mode and I wasn't so panicked and I knew what was coming. And so it was a real deep breath. I left it for quite some months before I kind of took the deep breath to go, right, okay, let's do it. And on that operation, I made sure it was a time when I could take time off afterwards. And I took 6 weeks off work to really just get my mind around it all. And that was the right thing to do. If I hadn't gone for that mastectomy, who knows what would have happened? You know, maybe the breast cancer would have spread and I would have been in a very different situation than I am now. Yes, I've had a major operation. I went on tamoxifen, which is a drug that helped prevent it coming back. I'm completely cancer-free 7 years later, and I forget I had it even. I moved on with my life. I'm really lucky. If you don't go for those checkups, and if I hadn't gone for my checkup, I might not be in this situation now. I might have been in a very different situation where I was fighting for my life rather than having an operation and getting rid of it. Do you know, when you're told you have to have a mastectomy, you're so frightened by the whole thing that it's just like, get the cancer out, get the boob off, I don't care. It's not until later that you suddenly get quite emotional about it. I was very detached from the whole thing until weeks after, I guess. And then I thought, you know what, I haven't emotionally dealt with this and I need to. And the thought of suddenly not being able to have any feeling that, you know, in a sexual way, you haven't got feeling in your boobs anymore is a big thing, and you have to deal with that. I feel very sorry for younger people or single people. I've got a partner and I know that he loves me whether I've got boobs or not. I was 49, 50 years old. I'd had children. So, you know, I was in an easier situation than people that are younger. It must be a lot harder for younger people. But it did take a while to accept them. And every time I looked at them in the mirror, I used to call them my freaky boobs because they looked slightly weird. I had both nipples taken away, and so I had these smiley scars. And I remember saying to a friend, I said, I'm just finding it kind of difficult to accept them. They're hard and they're freaky looking. So she said, well, why don't you name them? Because if you name them, you might get to like them. So I said, they're just hard like coconuts. And she said, well, name them then. Name them one Pina and one Colada. And that's what I think is so important, to keep a sense of humour about it. So one's named Pina, one's named Colada. And I found that really funny. And I learned to accept that. And then someone sent me this amazing little video that shows it's a Japanese thing that when something breaks, when a vase breaks, you put it back together with gold. And then that vase becomes completely unique. No other vase will look like that vase because it broke and it's been mended in a very special way. And that's how I look at my scars now. I think this is my story. And yes, I could have tattoos put on and I could make my boobs look normal, but actually I want to be different. I want these boobs to tell my story. And I've been through a journey and I've come through the other side and I'm stronger for it. And so I'm accepting them, but it took a while. One of the difficult things when you're diagnosed is you're kind of strong for other people because you know that everyone else is panicking around you. And obviously in my situation with my partner who'd already lost one partner from cancer, I suddenly became stoic. I was the one that was going to hold everybody together. And that can be very difficult because I put that pressure on myself because I wanted to be incredibly positive. I knew my mum would fall apart. So I wrote her an email. I thought, I'm not going to go on the phone to her because she's going to cry. I knew she'd fall apart on the phone. So I wrote her an email and I said, Mum, I've had a bit of a curveball. I went and had a mammogram and I have got breast cancer, but we have to get this in perspective. It's stage 1. It can be dealt with. And the worst thing that might happen is I've got to have an operation. I've got to have my boobs taken away. And if that's the worst thing that happens, then I'm going to be okay. I'm going to give you a call or call me, but please, Mum, try not to fall apart on the phone with me. Fall apart with your husband, fall apart with your friends, but just try not to fall apart with me on the phone because it's hard keeping yourself together. There's nothing wrong with crying. I mean, of course there's nothing wrong with crying. And yes, we cried, we all cried. But you've just got to stay positive, because that positive energy just really helps you get through these things and really helps your recovery. And yes, you've got to be realistic. Yes, you've got to, if you're in that awful situation where you're given a terrible diagnosis, then yes, you have to be realistic as well. But you've also always got to stay on the positive side. I wish that I'd had the support that Big C gives, because I had to find that support myself. And I realised that I hadn't dealt with it emotionally. So then I thought, what do I need to get myself through this emotionally? And so I had a friend that did therapy, and I did something called trauma therapy release, which releases, when you go through trauma, you hold on to it. And so if you don't let it go, if you don't deal with it, the next trauma you have, you hold on to, and then your trauma inside you just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so then a small trauma, like not being able to find your car keys, becomes major. So you have to try and release each trauma that you go through, and trauma release therapy helped me do that. I also went for different types of massage to try and release the stress. And I think the fact that I tried to find something for myself made a big difference and really got me through it. And I've got a friend at the moment that went through breast cancer at a similar time to me, and very sadly, her breast cancer's come back and it's aggressive. And so I found for her a therapist that she can talk to, and she's found that a lifeline. And she goes and talks to this therapist, because I think the trouble is, of course, when you have that diagnosis, you have fears that you don't want to talk to your friends about, you don't want to talk to your family about, because then it triggers them and they're too close to you. And so to talk to somebody that can help you and that you can express your deep fears and that can help you work through that, I think is incredibly important. And as I say, I wish I'd had something like the Big C where people understand it, they know how to help you, and things are in place to get you through that journey. Because if you're lucky like me, it is just a journey, and I've got to the end of my journey. Some people's journey is a lot longer, obviously.